One problem I see with business owners quite a bit is they believe that the business problems that they're going through are external to them. So in other words, they believe that there's not a lot they can do about it, or they just don't really know what to do. A lot of the times that the reason that is because it's not external, it's internal. The challenges that you're faced with challenge everything inside your core. So if you look inside of an environment of a human, or where the environment lies, it really comes down to the identity of the business owner. And when you look at the identity, you gotta step one up from there and look at their values. And when you look at the values, you gotta look at the beliefs. And when you look at the beliefs, you gotta look at the skills, the knowledge, and the education that that person has had around business. And if you embrace it this way, it's going to make your business life a lot easier, because you're going to have more control over the outcome if you believe all you have to do is shift your knowledge, your skills, your beliefs. If you have to question your values and see if they need questioning a little bit now, time to time, and reform the identity for who you are, because the person that is building the business isn't necessarily the person who's going to be successful. You're going to grow into that role eventually. So, I guess really what we need to realize is that our thinking is really what forms the action that we take. And so if our thinking's forming our action, then our environment plays a big role in that. So the people you surround yourself with on a regular basis. And if they're forming your beliefs, or if they're forming your thinking, I guess at the end of the day, they influence your thinking, then what is that doing for you to be successful? Are the people around you successful? We hear it all the time. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's true, it's ridiculously true. Catch yourself thinking different when you get around different people, and that's really what, if you want to grow, of course. If you don't want to grow, then you get around people that think big. They're going to just annoy you, and they're going to be off. So it really comes down to is if our thinking is really controlling our actions and what we do, then we really need to look below the surface, because everything that's happening in our life is just the results of below the surface. And below the surface being your skills, your knowledge, your education, and then beliefs, and how those beliefs and how that knowledge really forms the beliefs, how those skills form your beliefs. And as you start to, believe in more and more successful things, your values start to change. You start to see things differently. Your time becomes more valuable. The quality of the people that you surround yourself with are more important. And, that's really where it comes from. And then you get to shift your environment. And an environment can shift a couple of ways. Sometimes you can go to an event, get around some good people, and you make your conscious decision that day that you're going to change your entire life. That one's rare, but most of the time what people need to do is they need to start with education. They need to start with their environment, their education, and work on their skills and their knowledge. Once you get better skills and knowledge, and you're getting a good form of education, that's going to shift your beliefs. And as your beliefs and your values and your identity shift, then your thinking's going to shift. And if your thinking shifts, that will directly correlate with the behavior, how you behave, and the actions that you take. So it's as simple as that, really, is, if you look at all of those topics that I just went over, it's really up to you whether you succeed or not. And that's why, really, is because you've got a choice. You have the opportunity to do it. It's just, work through that function. Is what are the people that I'm surrounding myself with? How do I get better and more successful people around me, so that I start thinking different? I can start thinking more successful and success-oriented, because we get caught up in the mindsets of the people that are around us sometimes, and we don't believe that there's possibilities when there is. And possibilities are endless. Opportunities are endless. So, I'm just excited to meet with business owners, because there is an opportunity for every business owner to grow and become, multi-millionaires. And what really is fascinating is how in Canada, and I don't know what it's like in other countries, 50% of business owners fail in the first 5 years, meaning they won't make it to 5 years. In the second half of a decade, so the next 5 years, 80% of those 50% disappear. So you're looking at like 1 in 10 business owners who make it in their business to 10 years. And from beyond there also, many of them don't have an asset. Even at 10 years, they're still operating a business that doesn't work without them, and that is not sellable, and that is a liability and is not an asset, which is crazy. Brad Sugar's my mentor. He always says, the business owners, we're the crazy people that work 80 hours a week so we don't have to work 40 for somebody else. And I talked to a business owner the other day, and he said the exact same thing. He goes, I said, what are you in business for? He said, I just didn't want to work for anybody else. I said, well, you've got your goal. So what's your goal now? He says, I never really thought about that. And I said, how's things going? It's pretty tough. He says, it's hard to find work. I'm always looking for work. I said, do you think maybe if you set a bigger goal rather than just not working for somebody else, seeing how you achieved it, that you may look for opportunities where they're not there right now because your vision isn't big enough? I think a big part of what we need to realize in business is that business is not that complicated. It is actually quite simple, and that's the part that kind of annoys people when they tell a business owner, because if you told me that on the first few businesses that I had, I would have not liked it. But the truth is, it is simple. It's just not easy because we are constantly looking for the fastest, quickest way to build a commercial business that works without us. And usually what we're doing is not what we should be doing because we're not focused. And I would say the biggest key to success in business is the ability to stay focused on something for long periods of time. And the reason why that is because we have the answers, but we don't stay focused long enough to implement those answers or to implement the strategy. And we try it. Rather than doing it, we try it. We try things and they don't work right away, so we give up. And, that can be daunting because then how do you go back and do something you've already done once and fail and find out later that was actually the answer, we just didn't do it. Yeah, so inevitably, I think, one of the things that I enjoy about business, and probably the best part of business, is that every time that I learn something new, there's less resistance, right? And it's not because that resistance was lessened. It was my knowledge and my beliefs that lessened that resistance because there was some skills that I obtained. And that's really what makes business easier, is when we get better. And I love Jim Rohn, and I love to talk about Jim Rohn because that was his message. If I took one message away from Jim Rohn, it was always that life and business don't get easier, we get better. And that's just reality. I mean, to think otherwise, you got to be completely nuts. It's so evident that things get easier as we get better. And I think a part of that is we need to recognize is that you don't get better by chance. You get better by change. You get better by, setting a bigger goal, setting a bigger dream. You get better by learning something. You get better by setting a plan. And you also, inevitably, this is the most important one, you get better by taking action. That's the key. Because no matter what, if you take action, you're going to learn something. You can go out and be like a lot of students that I know that have taken 4 or 5 year courses and university degrees, and they spend 5 minutes with me, and it's like they are asking me where I learned all this stuff. How did you learn this? I never ever got taught any of this in our university. And I find, you probably did, by the way, you might have, but you probably weren't listening, or you weren't applying it, and you weren't taking action. If you were actually taking the stuff you're learning and acting on it, you'd probably be much further off than you are. And that's why, you want to get a business degree, my opinion is go build a business. And I don't like the idea. I hear a lot of these gurus and business savvy people that they've built businesses and they have done it, but they talk it's like, oh, well, just expect to, start and fail at 25 businesses. Well, that's pretty easy to say, not easy to do, to go out and fail that many times until you finally succeed. There's very few people that have that in them. So, I guess at the same time, the reason why they fail most of the time, those guys in those situations, including myself multiple times, is because I wasn't the person that I needed to be in order to build that business. And that's the harsh reality of it. It's not the fact that we had bad time, or the economy wasn't good, or the business idea wasn't good. It was just plain and simply, I wasn't ready. I didn't have the knowledge, the skills to do what I needed to do. So why not get around people that have that knowledge and those skills, and then surround yourself with them and learn from them. Start off small in business. You don't always got to grow $1 million business in 2 years. I've done both. I've built businesses slow and I've built them fast. And the ones that are slow are still here. And guess what? Later on, you do get to speed them up, because as you get a base in your business and you get the foundation built, you go from 30% or 40% or even 100%, 30, 40, 50 times the revenue. You don't need to worry about those little incremental growth. Get an opportunity to really grow. And that's what's exciting is you work really hard for 5 years. And it reminds me of bamboo. Somebody had told me one time that bamboo grows for 3 years or 2 to 3 years under the ground. And then eventually it just starts popping up and it can grow up to a foot a day. Well, that is exactly reminds me about business, because that's exactly it. You don't see anything for 2, 3, 4, 5 years because it's growing. You're growing. That's the main thing. You're growing. The business grows with you. So the business is growing, you're growing, and then all of a sudden everything clicks. Or it doesn't, because you never got around the right people and you burn out and you shut down and you become the 1 in 5, or the 5 out of 10 people that fail in 5 years. And after that, if you don't do some corrections and get enough pain to make the change that you need to change, then you'll probably do that in the second half, and that one you're going to drop probably a pretty good chance that you're going to fail in that next 5 years. If you happen to make it past that, you might just be crazy to go through all the pain and you haven't done what you needed to do, but you're just resilient, you don't quit. You still don't have an asset. You still don't have a business that works without you after 10 years. That is really, really frustrating. I can't see any reason why anybody would want that. Get into business. True freedom is what we get into business for. I've heard a lot of explanations of what success is, but really it's like having money and personal well-being. You can put your personal well-being first. That was one of the best foundations that I had for success, was personal well-being could always come before money. To me, that is success. That is real success in business, in life. If you could put your personal well-being before money, I think that would be a priority, and before others, of course. In order to get there, I think idea, and be careful who you watch and who you listen to, because remember that people tell you things, including myself. It's our own experience, not going to be your experience. Your experience is going to be much different than my experience. They flew in a lot faster than I did. It took a lot longer than some. Inevitably, your experience is different than others. So if you're listening to other people and that you take everything everybody says as something that is like your business Bible, you're going to be doing things to create someone else's future, because that's what they did to create the future they wanted, not the future that you want. That's part of the formula for success is dreams, goals, learn, plan, act. Brad Sugars, he talks about that all the time, and I think it makes the most sense of all is if you have your own dream of what you want, maybe for me it's like I want to always put my personal well-being before money. It will never come in the way of my personal well-being. If that's my goal and that's my dream, when do I want to have that by as a goal? What am I going to need to learn and actually to understand to be able to actually have that come into fruition? You start to break that down. The learning is the most important, but learning and skills, because you're learning your skills and your beliefs, and your thinking forms your behavior and your actions. So you look at all that stuff, and you need a bit of a plan, because you need to know exactly how it's going to happen, but you need to know how you'd like it to happen. It doesn't ever go the way you like it. It might go better. It might go better than you would imagine. It might go not as easy, not as fast, not as smooth as you would have liked it, which is often the case. Inevitably, all of that, you got your vision, which is your dreams, a goal, which is your timeline, you got your learn, which is your planning, and hopefully that's your learn plan and not just all these guys online watching. Because remember, their plan is their plan. Your plan is different. Learn, plan, massive action. You'll never know. And people, what if it's not the right plan? Well, you'll find out sooner by taking action than sitting on your ass. The reality. You'll never know if it's the wrong plan if you don't do it. Do it. Do something. And if not sure how to do it, remember one thing. The steps that people talk about the ladder of learning, and as you learn, you become more conscious of things. You need to do things in order to learn it. to make those mistakes because your consciousness doesn't even know what doing is a mistake until you find out it is. You think it's the right thing to do. It happens all the time. Remember that when you're learning and you're growing and you're afraid to take action because you don't know exactly what to do, everything you need to do is ask yourself one thing. Could I do? Completely fix the problem, but it's in the process of improvement. Always one thing you could do that would not fix the problem, maybe. At least start to improve it and maybe possibly dramatically improve your situation. Whenever I get stuck on something, it's always that. Derek, what is one thing you did it, you remotely remove some of the problem? Because once you've done that small move, see the next one. To see the next one. You get to see the next one. When you're climbing stairs to a goal, higher, and as you reach up you can see a little bit further, and I learn a little more, you can see a little bit further, you're a little bit better. As you're taking those steps up, you'll start to find the solution. The solution isn't just like one thing, it's going to be 1,000 things, 1,000 moves. One gets you further towards it. No magic in this life. In fact, this is very hard for a reason. Because not many people will do it, and not many people will live the life of what a business owner, a true business owner, I'm not talking self-employed, but a true business owner's life. The life that I want. I want to live the life where I choose to put my health first. Money will never come in my way. That's ideal for me, but what's ideal for you? And at the end of the day, when we look at the learning and the beliefs that we form, not up to anybody else, it's up to us. We live the life we wish, we live the life we dream, somebody else's life. Bruce.